Story 1. Naka Cave, the serpent that became a mountain. They say there are mountains that look like mountains, and there are mountains that look like something pretending to be stone. In the far northeast of Thailand, deep within the forests of Phu Lanka National Park, there is a place where that difference becomes impossible to ignore. Long before you reach it, before the path narrows and the air grows thick with moisture and silence, people begin to feel watched. Not in the way one feels eyes on the back of the neck, but in the way one feels pressure, like standing too close to something enormous without being able to see its full shape. The locals do not speak loudly here. They do not laugh easily. And when they say the name Naka Cave, they do so carefully, because to them this place is not scenery, not geology, not a curiosity. It is a body. As you approach the mountain, it appears ordinary at first. Forested slopes, stone walls, the slow drip of water somewhere unseen. But then the rock changes. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, in a way that unsettles the mind. The randomness of natural stone gives way to repetition. Pattern. Structure. The surface begins to overlap in long, curved segments, each one fitted against the next with disturbing precision. Scales. Massive scales, layered one over another, hardened into stone yet arranged exactly as living flesh would be. The longer you look, the more your brain stops seeing rock and starts seeing skin. This is the moment many visitors fall silent, because recognition arrives before belief. The human mind is ancient, older than logic, and it knows the shape of predators instinctively. Once the resemblance takes hold, it cannot be undone. People report an immediate tightening in the chest, a shallow breath they did not realize they were holding. Some feel dizzy. Others feel an irrational urge to leave, as if an internal warning has been triggered. The locals say this is the mountain realizing it has been noticed. According to ancient Thai and Lao belief, this place is the petrified form of a Nāga, an immense serpent being that existed long before humans built temples or named the land. The Nāga were not animals. They were ancient intelligences, guardians of thresholds, rulers of water and earth, beings that could shape rivers, summon storms, and decide who crossed between worlds. Among them was one known as Naka Nakara, a serpent so vast and willful that it defied the balance of the world itself. The stories do not say Naka was killed. Death, the elders insist, was never possible. Instead, Naka was restrained, bound, turned to stone in the exact position it occupied at the moment it was stopped. Not buried, not destroyed, preserved. The mountain is not built on the serpent. The mountain is the serpent. Its coiled body frozen mid-motion. Its scales locked in place exactly as they flexed. The long ridges people climb today are said to be its spine. The deep fractures in the rock are where the body strained against its bindings. Inside the cave, sound behaves strangely. Voices do not echo the way they should. They seem to sink into the stone, absorbed rather than reflected. Guides warn visitors never to shout, never to joke loudly, never to mock what they see. They say disrespect angers what sleeps here, and anger is dangerous when directed at something that cannot move freely. Some areas are deliberately left unmarked, not because they are unsafe, but because the elders believe certain parts of the body should not be touched. During the rainy season, the illusion becomes unbearable. Water runs down the stone in thin, winding streams, tracing the scale patterns perfectly, making the surface glisten as if it were alive. In fog, the mountain disappears entirely, leaving only the sensation of something massive occupying the space around you. People describe the fog here as heavy, pressing, as if breathing becomes a shared act between the visitor and the mountain. Locals say this is when Naka is closest to the surface. This is when the stone remembers what it used to be. There are stories of people who treated the cave as nothing more than a backdrop for photographs. Tourists who climbed recklessly, who laughed, who shouted, who posed standing on what locals believe is the serpent's back. Some slipped in places where the rock should have been stable. Others were struck by sudden panic or nausea with no physical cause. A few reported that the fear followed them home. Recurring dreams of being watched by something too large to comprehend, dreams of stone cracking, of pressure building beneath the earth. Elders say misfortune does not always arrive immediately. Sometimes the serpent does not punish the body, but the path of a life. What unsettles even skeptics is the precision of the formations. Geologists explain erosion, sedimentation, weathering, and yet the resemblance remains disturbingly specific. The scale patterns repeat with intention. The curves align like muscle beneath skin. There is even a formation locals identify as the head, positioned higher than the rest of the body, as if the serpent was lifting itself when it was stopped. The mouth-like opening of the cave is said to be where breath once passed in and out. Even those who reject the myth admit one thing: this does not feel accidental. In nearby villages, offerings are still made. Incense, flowers, quiet prayers whispered rather than spoken aloud. Not to worship, but to appease. The belief is simple and terrifying. Naka is not dead. Stone is not a grave. Stone is a restraint. A prison designed to last only as long as it remains undisturbed. Elders speak of earthquakes in distant lands, of mountains splitting, of ancient things shifting beneath the surface of the world. They say when the ground shakes, it is not always the movement of plates. Sometimes it is something enormous testing its limits. And when people ask why such stories appear everywhere, why cultures separated by oceans all speak of giant serpents turned to stone, the elders answer without hesitation. Because killing them was never an option. So they were left where they fell, disguised as geography, frozen into the skin of the world, waiting. Every mountain like this is not a monument, but a warning. And every step taken across those stone scales is a reminder that sleep is not the same as death. Naka Cave does not demand belief. It demands caution. Because once you have stood there, once you have felt the weight of that place pressing back against your presence, the question is no longer whether the legend is real. The question becomes how long something that old, that powerful, and that patient can remain asleep. And what happens when stone finally remembers how to move? Story 2. The mountain that is not asleep. Mount Nyangani, the serpent that still takes people. They say some mountains are climbed, and some mountains allow you to leave. Mount Nyangani belongs to the second kind, rising higher than any other point in Zimbabwe. It is almost always wrapped in cloud, as if deliberately hiding its shape from the sky. From a distance, it looks calm, almost inviting: green slopes, cool air, rolling mist. But the people who live near it do not admire it. They endure it, and they do so carefully. For generations, elders have warned that Nyangani is not a mountain in the way people understand mountains. It does not sit passively on the land. It occupies it. According to Shona oral tradition, something ancient was sealed here long before humans built villages in the valleys below. Some describe it as a colossal serpent spirit, others as a presence too vast to be given a single form. What matters is not how it looks, but how it behaves. Nyangani listens. Nyangani responds. And Nyangani does not always give back what it takes. Disappearances here are not rare enough to be dismissed as coincidence. Hikers vanish on well-marked paths. Experienced climbers lose their bearings on open ground. Children step a few meters ahead of their families and simply are no longer there. Search teams comb the slopes for days, sometimes weeks, only to find nothing. No broken branches. No signs of falls. No trails leading away. When bodies are recovered, and not all are, they are found in places that defy logic. Uphill from where the person vanished, miles away across terrain they could not have crossed, or lying peacefully in the open as if they had simply chosen to lie down and never stand again. The elders say the mountain does not chase people. It does not need to. It waits for moments of confusion, moments of exhaustion, moments when the mind drifts just enough for the mountain to step closer. Mist is the mountain's greatest weapon. It arrives without warning, thick and suffocating, swallowing sound and distance at the same time. In the fog, shouting names is forbidden. Calling out to lost companions is believed to draw the mountain's attention. Elders say Nyangani answers when spoken to, and its answers are never kind. The fog is not weather, they say. It is breath. When it rolls in, the mountain is aware. There are rules that everyone near Nyangani knows, even if they cannot explain why. Never whistle. Never shout names into the mist. Never mock the mountain. Never wander alone. Never run when you feel lost. Rangers have reported radios failing without reason, compasses spinning wildly or pointing back toward the summit no matter which direction they walk. Paths that seem to loop back on themselves. Ground that feels subtly tilted, as if guiding footsteps where they should not go. Storms here are sudden and violent. Clear skies collapse into freezing rain and screaming winds in minutes. Temperatures drop sharply, draining strength and clarity. Survivors describe the same sensation, the feeling that the mountain is watching their thoughts unravel. That panic feeds something unseen. Elders say this is when Nyangani feeds, not on flesh, but on confusion. When the mind fractures, the mountain opens. Some myths go further. They say Nyangani is the hardened body of a serpent so vast its coils shaped the valleys below. Its spine forms the ridges. Its breath rises as fog. Its agitation shakes the weather loose from the sky. When people disappear, they are not swallowed by earth or forest, but drawn into spaces that no longer exist on the surface. Places folded inward when the serpent was bound. Not underground. Somewhere else. What troubles investigators most are the details left behind. Backpacks found untouched. Shoes neatly placed side by side. Personal belongings arranged as if someone wanted them to be found. Faces frozen not in terror, but in stillness. The kind of stillness that suggests realization rather than panic. As if, at the end, the missing understood something they were never meant to. Villages near the mountain still leave offerings. Small, quiet gestures meant not to worship, but to acknowledge. To remind the mountain that people remember the old rules. That they have not forgotten what lives there. Some refuse to look toward Nyangani after sunset. Others teach their children never to speak its name aloud on the slopes. Silence, they believe, is a form of respect. If Naka Cave feels like a body frozen in stone, Nyangani feels like a body that never fully stopped moving. Where Naka sleeps under scales of rock, Nyangani watches through mist and storm. Where Naka is restrained by petrification, Nyangani is restrained by memory, ritual, and fear. And unlike the serpent in Thailand, this one still takes what wanders too close. Across continents that never spoke to each other, the same story emerges in different voices. Of giants too powerful to destroy, of beings turned into land rather than killed, of mountains that behave like predators. Some are sealed in stone, some are sealed in fog. All of them remain, and Nyangani is only the second. Because there are other places, older, quieter, farther away, where the earth itself bears the unmistakable shape of something ancient, something defeated but not destroyed, waiting patiently beneath the surface of the world for the moment when restraint finally fails. Story 3. The stone serpents of the Himalayas. The Nāga that became the spine of the world. High above the world, where air thins and sound seems to vanish into stone, there are mountains the locals do not climb for pride or conquest. They pass beneath them quietly, eyes lowered, voices restrained, because in the Himalayas the land is not just old, it is aware. Villagers say the mountains remember a time before humans, before animals, before even gods walked freely. And in that time, the Nāga ruled. Not the small serpent figures carved into temples, but colossal beings of scale and intelligence, said to stretch for miles, coiling through valleys, beneath rivers, and along the bones of the earth itself. In ancient Hindu and Buddhist lore, the Nāga were guardians of thresholds, between life and death, sky and underworld, water and stone. They controlled rain, earthquakes, fertility, and disease. When pleased, they blessed entire regions. When angered, they swallowed villages whole. The most forbidden stories speak of a war that should not be spoken of openly, a cosmic conflict between divine forces and the great Nāga kings. The serpents were not evil, the elders insist. They were simply too powerful, too independent, too unwilling to submit to a new order of the world. And so they were not destroyed. They were sealed. In remote Himalayan regions, especially along the Uttarakhand, Nepal border, there are ridgelines that curve unnaturally, forming long, sinuous shapes that locals identify immediately as bodies. Valleys that twist like something struck the earth and dragged itself forward. Stone formations resembling scales the size of houses, stacked and hardened into place. These are not metaphors. Villagers will point and tell you plainly. This is the back, this is the coil, this is where it turned its head. Certain caves are never entered. Not because they collapse, but because people who go inside come out changed, or not at all. Monks tell of deep chambers where the stone walls pulse faintly in torchlight, as if responding to presence. Of silence so thick it presses against the ears. of sudden nausea and fear that arrives without warning, followed by the overwhelming urge to leave immediately. They say these caves are not hollow spaces, but pressure points, places where the Naga's body presses closest to the surface. Earthquakes in the region are explained very differently here. Locals do not say the ground shifted. They say the serpent adjusted. When the earth trembles, offerings are made. Milk, flowers, incense placed carefully at shrines carved directly into rock. Not to worship, but to soothe. To remind what sleeps beneath that the people still remember the old agreements. There are stories of entire villages relocated generations ago after repeated landslides and tremors, not because the land was unstable, but because it was restless. Elders warned that living directly on the serpent's spine invited agitation. Crops failed. Livestock panicked. Children reported dreams of something moving beneath their beds. When the villages moved, the disturbances lessened. Travelers who trek through these regions often report strange sensations. Pressure headaches, sudden disorientation, the feeling of being watched from below rather than above. Some say compasses behave erratically. Others describe hearing low, rhythmic sounds at night, too slow to be animals, too deep to be wind. Monks warn pilgrims never to sleep directly on bare rock in certain areas, especially during storms. They say the Naga listens best when rain falls. Ancient texts speak of Naga turned into mountains to block forbidden paths, to seal gateways between realms that humans were never meant to cross. Certain passes are avoided entirely, not because they are difficult, but because people do not return. Those who do come back speak of paths that led nowhere, of walking for hours only to arrive at the same place, of mountains that seemed to close in around them. A few returned unable to speak of what they saw, only repeating the same phrase until death. It was not stone. Skeptics argue erosion, tectonics, coincidence. But even scientists admit the Himalayas behave differently from other mountain ranges. They rise, they grow, they shift, as if something beneath them is still pushing upward. Locals say this is not geology. It is pressure, restraint straining against time. Unlike Naka Cave, where the serpent is visible, and unlike Nyangani, where it hunts through mist, the Himalayan Naga is hidden, buried, integrated into the world itself. It does not need to take people individually. Its presence shapes weather, land, and fate across entire regions. It is not waiting to awaken. It is already awake, only bound. And this is where the pattern tightens. Across Thailand, Africa, and now the roof of the world, the same solution appears again and again. When something is too powerful to kill, too ancient to destroy, it is not erased. It is immobilized, turned into landscape, disguised as nature. A prison built so vast it becomes invisible. Stone is not death. Stone is containment. And the Himalayas are not just mountains. They are a lock. And locks exist for a reason. Story 4. The Petrified Worms of Europe. The serpent that was never truly killed. Long before Europe built cathedrals of stone and crowned kings with iron, there were parts of the land people avoided entirely. Not because they were barren, but because they were remembered. In the green, quiet countryside of northern England, where rolling hills now look peaceful and harmless, there is a legend so old it survived the erasure of gods, the rise of Christianity, and the rewriting of history. Locals call it the lantern worm. Scholars call it folklore. But the land itself tells a different story. The river where winds calmly through County Durham today, slow and reflective, cutting through fields that look tame and domesticated. But elders say the river once carried something far older than water. According to the legend, centuries ago a massive serpent, called a worm in Old English, meaning dragon or great snake, emerged from the depths of the river. It was not a creature that slithered quietly. It coiled around hills. It crushed livestock without effort. It wrapped itself around villages and tightened until buildings splintered and people fled screaming into the forest. Descriptions of the worm are disturbingly consistent. A body thick as a tree trunk. Skin armored in rings or coils so hard weapons shattered against it. A mouth lined with rows of inward-facing teeth, making escape impossible once caught. Some accounts say it did not simply kill. It crushed and suffocated slowly, as if feeding on panic as much as flesh. The creature made its home along the riverbanks, wrapping itself around high ground. dragging its body repeatedly across the land until deep grooves were carved into the earth. And those grooves, locals insist, are still there. Certain hills near Lambton are said to match the exact coiling pattern described in the oldest versions of the story. Long, circular earthworks, flattened ridges where vegetation grows differently, places where the land feels unnaturally compressed, as if something heavy lay there for far too long. Farmers have reported livestock refusing to graze in specific areas, even generations later. Horses panic without visible cause. Dogs refuse to approach the river at certain bends. According to legend, the worm could not be killed by ordinary means. Spears broke, swords bent, fire failed. The creature regenerated, its body reforming no matter how much was cut away. Finally, a knight, John Lambton, returned from exile and confronted the worm using a method that feels less like combat and more like ritual. He wore armor lined with spikes and forced the creature to coil around him. As it crushed, the spikes tore into its flesh, shredding it from the inside. But here is where the story grows darker. Some versions say the worm did not die. It dissolved, melted into the land. Its blood soaked into the soil. Its body collapsed and hardened. And from that moment on, the land itself became cursed. The Lambton family was doomed for generations. Each firstborn son was said to die violently. Lands failed. Accidents followed them, as if destroying the body did not destroy the presence, only anchored it. Locals believe the worm was not a random monster, but an ancient guardian spirit of the river, corrupted or awakened at the wrong time. When it was killed, the balance was broken. What remained was not a corpse, but a residue, a memory embedded into the land. And memory, when trapped long enough, becomes geography. Even today, some villagers say the hills near the river where feel wrong at night. Fog gathers too thickly. Sounds travel oddly. Footsteps echo where they shouldn't. There are reports of low, grinding noises after heavy rain, like stone shifting against stone beneath the ground. Children have claimed to dream of something wrapped beneath their homes, pressing upward slowly, patiently. What makes the Lambton worm especially disturbing is how closely it mirrors the stories from Asia and Africa. A colossal serpent, too powerful to destroy outright, neutralized through containment rather than annihilation. The transformation of a living being into land. Europe, it seems, did not escape the pattern, it simply renamed it. Christian chroniclers attempted to sanitize the story, framing it as a moral lesson about sin and redemption. But older pagan fragments tell something else entirely. They speak of land spirits bound to rivers, of serpents that shaped valleys with their bodies, of ancient agreements between humans and things that lived beneath the surface. Agreements broken when people forgot the cost. Unlike Naka Cave, where the serpent is visible, or Nyangani, where it actively takes, the Lambton worm represents something quieter and perhaps more dangerous. A serpent reduced to landscape, to hills, to memory, no longer hunting, but never gone. And if Europe, with all its churches and sciences, still carries the scars of a petrified serpent beneath green fields and quiet rivers, then the implication becomes unavoidable. These beings were not myths isolated to one culture. They were global, and wherever they fell, the land remembers their shape, which raises a final, unsettling question. If so many of these serpents were turned into stone, how many more lie hidden beneath places we call ordinary, waiting, patient, disguised as earth, until something reminds them what they used to be? Story 5. The Feathered Serpent's Stone Body. The god that became the city. Long before the Aztecs arrived, before the Maya carved calendars into stone, before history had names for the gods it feared, there was a city so vast and precise that even today no one can explain who truly built it. It stands just outside modern Mexico City, silent, monumental, and deeply unsettling. The Aztecs, when they found it already abandoned, refused to believe humans could have created it. They named it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born. Or, according to older interpretations, the place where gods became something else. At the heart of the city lies the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, the serpent god who walked between sky and earth. Unlike the other serpents of the world, Quetzalcoatl was not merely scaled. He was feathered, a being that combined the ground-hugging body of a snake with the dominion of the air. He was knowledge, wind, creation, destruction. And according to the oldest fragments of Mesoamerican belief, he did not simply leave this world. He was sealed into it. The carvings on the temple are impossible to ignore. Stone serpent heads emerge repeatedly from the structure, mouths open, eyes wide, frozen in expressions that feel less decorative and more interrupted. They are not arranged randomly. They follow a rhythm, a pattern, as if marking segments of a body. Archaeologists describe them as symbolic. Priests describe them as literal. Elders say the pyramid is not a building. It is an anchor. Beneath Teotihuacan lies a network of tunnels, some natural, some carved deliberately, leading to chambers filled with liquid mercury, a substance ancient Mesoamerican cultures associated with the underworld, the divine, and transformation. Mercury, reflective and toxic, was believed to mimic water that did not belong to the living world. The tunnels run directly beneath the temple of the feathered serpent, as if something above was meant to be restrained, weighed down, mirrored, and sealed. According to forbidden interpretations of surviving myths, Quetzalcoatl did not ascend peacefully into the heavens. He attempted to leave. Something stopped him. The story does not say he was killed. It says he was changed, bound into stone, broken into sections, his immense body distributed across the city itself. The pyramids form parts of him. The avenue of the dead traces the path of his movement. The serpent heads mark where his form breaches the surface. Some researchers quietly admit that Teotihuacan's layout is disturbingly organic. Not geometric in the way human cities are, but segmented, aligned, coiled. The city feels less like a settlement and more like a diagram, or a body map. Visitors often report strange sensations near the temple of the feathered serpent: pressure headaches, vertigo, nausea, sudden fear with no visible cause. Sound behaves oddly. Footsteps echo where there are no walls. Silence feels too heavy, as if pressing back. There are stories of workers who refuse to continue excavations after finding certain chambers, of equipment malfunctioning repeatedly in specific areas, of sudden illness after prolonged work underground. These reports are usually dismissed quietly, filed away, forgotten. But local guides will tell you that the city does not like to be disturbed, that too much digging awakens attention. Unlike the Nāga of the Himalayas or the Serpent of Nyangani, Quetzalcoatl is not feared as a monster. He is feared as a god that was too powerful to remain free. His followers believed he would one day return, not from the sky, but from the earth itself, that his stone body would remember movement, that his breath would return as wind, that the feathers would rise again. This belief is why the Aztecs, when they encountered the ruins, chose not to live there. They performed rituals. They walked its avenues. They respected it, but they did not rebuild it. They said the gods had already finished their work there, that the city was not abandoned, it was completed. What makes Teotihuacan uniquely terrifying among the world's petrified serpent sites is scale. Naka Cave is a body. Nyangani is a presence. The Himalayas are a prison. But Teotihuacan is a corpse turned into civilization, a god transformed into architecture, a being dismantled and repurposed as a city so that no single part could awaken alone. And yet, the patterns persist. Across the world, cultures that never spoke, never traded, never met, all arrived at the same solution when faced with something they could not destroy. They did not kill it. They did not banish it. They turned it into land, into mountains, into cities, into sacred geography so vast that it became invisible. Stone, again, was not death. Stone was containment. And as long as the serpent remains stone, the world remains balanced. The fear lies not in what these places once were, but in the quiet, unavoidable question they leave behind. What happens when stone cracks? And how many of our most ancient cities are not built on the remains of gods, but from them? Across continents that never shared language, never shared maps, never shared gods, the same story keeps appearing. Not once, not twice, but everywhere. Colossal serpents, too powerful to kill, too dangerous to release. So they were not destroyed. They were sealed, turned into mountains, turned into caves, turned into cities, turned into the very ground we walk on. From the stone scales of Naka Cave, to the mist-covered coils of Mount Nyangani, to the buried Nāga beneath the Himalayas, to the god-shaped city of Teotihuacan. Stone was never meant to be a grave. Stone was meant to be a lock. So now we ask you, Have you ever visited a place that felt wrong, even though nothing looked wrong? Have you heard stories of mountains, caves, or ruins that people avoid without explanation? And if you stood on land that was once something alive, would you still walk freely across it? If this episode unsettled you, subscribe to the channel. If these stories stayed with you, subscribe and like this video. And if you know a place that carries a legend like this, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may appear in the next episode. Because this series is far from over, there are still places around the world where the earth remembers what it was forced to become. And next time, we go looking for them.